Hi guys, my name's Aiden Robinson. I am the lead alto player for the University of Montana Jazz Ensemble, and I'm going to start by talking to you about the role of the lead alto spot. So, your job is exactly what it sounds like. You are the leader. So, what that means is you are making the stylistic choices that the rest of the saxophone section has to follow. Now, while that entails that in a way you can never be wrong, you can also be wrong by playing it differently, different times. So your job is to be as consistent as you possibly can. Once you make a musical decision in your role on how you're going to play a line, how you're going to play any sort of figure at all, you have to stick to that. So that is your most important job. Your second most important job is to be above everyone else. You are the star of the saxophone section in that way because you have the melody lines. You're the soaring kind of melody over everything else, and everyone else's job is to support you. So you have to let them do that by, again, being consistent, being as in tune as you can be, and being as clean as you can be. You should, by your second rehearsal, be able to play everything in your part correctly so that you can have your other section members trust you as much as you can. And then lastly, your job as lead alto player is you do report to a couple different people. Your lead trumpet is who you report to if you're playing any lines with them. And then obviously you are kind of a way to show how the director wants to play the music. So make sure you're always following what he wants, even if it's not exactly what you would want to do. And that's all for being a lead alto player.
Hi there, my name is Cade Chastain, and I play Alto 2 in the University of Montana Jazz Ensemble. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the role of Alto 2. It's very varied. It changes a lot depending upon the music, depending upon the instrumentation. Often, your primary goal is to make sure that the lead alto has a warmer sound. You want a nice, warm, rich sound to help broaden the very direct sound of Alto 1. Often you find yourself playing with many different instruments as opposed to just the saxophone section too. I find that I play music that goes from playing with the whole saxophone section to playing with a couple trombones, playing with a couple trumpets, or even just some odd instrumentations with a few saxophones and some other instruments thrown in the mix. You truly are the jack of all trades. You do all kinds of interesting things across the ensemble and help fill out the sound as an important inner voice. And that's the role of Alto 2.
Hello, my name is Garrett Waters, and I play first tenor in the University of Montana Jazz Ensemble. The role of the first tenor is to both support the lead alto and the upper voices in the ensemble, and also to play melodic lines in unison with trumpets and trombones in many charts. Also, the first tenor will often be one of the instruments that improvises in many big band arrangements, and so being really comfortable on many common jazz forms like blues, rhythm changes, and standards will really help make those solos great. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jolene Green, and I play second tenor in the University of Montana Jazz Ensemble. As tenor 2, your job is to fill out the section sound and support the bright, direct sound of Alto 1. You should be playing with a warm, full, big, fuzzy sound. You should use lots of air and subtone to do this. Often you'll have the weirdest harmony parts within the section, so you need to be listening at all times in order to recognize these spots. You'll also be playing with the other instruments in the band, usually the trombones instead of with the rest of the saxophone section. You need to be independent enough not to be relying on the rest of your section for entrances and cutoffs, and always be listening across the band.
Hello, I am Colton Baker, and today I'm subbing for the Jazz 1 Barry sax spot. As the Barry saxophonist, your role is to support intonation and harmony for your section. And because of this, you must be very in tune. If you are out of tune at all, then your whole section sounds bad. You often switch roles within the band, switching between trombone, trumpet, and saxophone parts. Within your section, you should be the second loudest just behind the alto saxophone in order to provide proper support for melodic lines and for intonation and harmony.
So today I wanted to talk to you guys about the concept of articulating in jazz and in jazz band. So one of the very biggest quotes from my professor, and something that we all tend to live by here, is that jazz is a legato style. Now this doesn't mean you're slurring everything per se, but it does mean that unless it's very specifically written, you're not going to be playing everything as harshly articulated as possible. So you want to make sure that you have a very relaxed feel, because that will make your swing feel a lot better. Now, the very basic jazz articulation is what we call a back accent tongue, where we articulate just the backbeats, and I'll demonstrate that for you now. Now, when it comes to jazz being a legato style, in addition to that, that means you want to do it about at that intensity. You don't want to be... Otherwise, you know, it just sounds very clunky, very ricky-ticky. So, that, while being your basic, is not everything that you're going to play. You know, lines call for different articulations. So while that is a good basic to stand by, you're going to want to keep in touch with your music, do what's written, but when you just have a string of eighth notes, that is a very, very good basic to go to. Here's an example of us playing an excerpt with improper jazz articulation. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the differences between mouthpieces, classical versus jazz, and why mouthpieces are important in jazz. I have here a classical mouthpiece. This is a Van Doren Optimum AL4, and I have here a Jody Jazz Star 6 alto saxophone mouthpiece. There are some distinct differences between the two. The jazz mouthpiece has a wider tip opening versus the classical mouthpiece, and the jazz mouthpiece has a smaller bore and smaller chamber versus the classical mouthpiece, which has a larger chamber. Now, I'd like to play a little bit on each mouthpiece to kind of show you the difference between the sounds. The classical mouthpiece first. Now, the jazz mouthpiece. Notice how much brighter the sound is on a jazz mouthpiece versus the classical mouthpiece. You also notice I have two very different ligatures on each mouthpiece. Ligatures are actually not that important. I play on these ligatures purely based upon how the mouthpiece feels and how intonation works on each mouthpiece. It's not really that big a deal. So long as you have a ligature that holds the reed on well, you're good to go. There is a difference between jazz and classical reeds, however. On my jazz setup, I use a Van Doren Java 3. This reed is great for jazz because it has a slightly rounded tip compared to the classical mouthpiece, or compared to the classical reed, and slightly less file. And on classical, I play between a Van Doren 3 to 3.5, depending upon which brand of Van Doren. In this case, I'm using a Van Doren V12, but if I were to play on just a blue box Van Doren, it'd probably be like a 3.5. And this one has a usually denser core, and the tip is filed a little bit more. And for storing my reeds, I like to make sure that I keep them in a humidified case. I have one by, I believe, D'Addario Woodwinds makes this one, and it contains slots for 8 reeds in there, and it has a little humidifying pack in the bottom of it. It helps keep my reeds very, very controlled, in a controlled environment. And when I set up my reeds as well, I have a reed cup. It's just a little tiny cup that's full of water. Stick them in there when I'm soaked instead of soaking them in my mouth. The idea is that spit is not a great way to get your reeds fully moistened, and they'll also create an area on the reed where one half is dry and the other half is wet. It means that there's a place in the middle where they meet together, and that's not very good for the reed. It means that they're both at 2 different levels of moisture and humidity. And that is reeds and mouthpieces.
Hello. Today I'd like to talk to you about swing feel and how to have a unified swing feel as a section when playing in a big band. The common issue with big bands is that everybody feels eighth notes differently. Some people are more feeling triplets, some people are subdividing the eighth notes evenly, and this creates a very cluttered, clunky sound. Now, a good exercise to maybe start unifying your sense of swing feel is to simply speak like a drum set ride cymbal pattern. Say something like day, day, ga, day, day, ga, day. That's simply a quarter note followed by 2 swing eighth notes. Getting the whole band saying this together will help everyone lock in and feel those swing eighth notes together. Alright, so this is an example of our section playing with a bad and ununified swing feel.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, I'm going to talk to you about blend within the section and why it's important to overall section sound. So blend is the way your section sounds together as a whole. And in order to have good blend, you need to take into account dynamics, tone, intonation, and articulation. You should make sure that you're playing the appropriate dynamic level relating to the people around you. You should make sure your tone fits inside the section sound and you aren't sticking out. If you sound significantly different than the people around you, you're probably sticking out. You can base this off how the lead alto is playing. Your sound should be supporting theirs, never overpowering it. You should be matching their articulation, dynamics, and style. And it's important to be listening to lead alto and the rest of the section in order to have good blend. Here's an example of our section playing with bad blend.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Intonation is one of the most important parts of creating a good resonant sound, both as a group and as a solo player. The best players in the world still work on sound production for hours every day. To work on intonation, you need to be able to hear when something is out of tune. If you have a drone or a piano, this is easy to do, but otherwise you can just experiment with it while you're tuning in class. When you're out of tune, it sounds like waves in the sound. If you hear this, then you can try moving your mouthpiece on your neck, either in or out. And if it gets worse, then you either moved your mouthpiece in the wrong direction or in the right direction but too far. It is important to know that after tuning your tuning note, you are not completely in tune. Every instrument and every saxophone has different tuning tendencies for different notes. And tuning your tuning note gets you in the ballpark, but you need to be able to adjust the rest of the notes on the instrument on the fly. Robert Young has 2 great videos, one titled Voicing Basics and another titled Intonation Part 1. He comes from a more classical side of things, but these basics apply to everything on the saxophone. Another good video to watch on this, more from the jazz side of things, is Sir Valor Sax's video on saxophone intonation. This video is much longer and is much more complicated. This is an example of us playing with bad intonation.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, guys, you've heard a lot of very good advice. And now, at the very end of this video, we're going to go ahead and do a good performance, taking all of that into account to play at the best of our abilities and hopefully give you guys a good example of what it should sound like when everything is lining up and being played well. My name's Aiden Robinson again from the Jazz Ensemble, and thank you guys very much for watching. 3, 4.